This is Odin's Wolf Survival, and I'm in the sunlit subterranean cavern of Wolfhaven. Today on the shield table, I have a very primitive olive oil lamp. That thing has been used for many centuries, and it still works. I used it the other day when the power was out. I lit it up. Worked pretty good, about a candle power. Burned for a long time, well over 12 hours. I was kind of surprised. And I'm not using olive oil, I'm using vegetable oil, which will smoke some, but if you keep your wick down a little bit, it smokes a lot less. You can see the flame. And I thought, not everybody's going to have those on hand. So I figured I'd make one, which is fairly easy to do. So what you do is you have a couple of blocks, couple aluminum cans, some cotton wicking material, which this is just the stuff that you tie up like turkey legs and stuff like that. It's pure cotton. So I braided it out, cordage twisted it out into a little thicker cord. The inside wire from a twist tie from a loaf of bread, just scrape it out. That's not exactly necessary, but it sure makes life a lot nicer. A Sharpie or some way to mark, a way to cut, which would be scissors or a knife, or you could just chew it off with your teeth like a couple of the cans that I did actually look like beforehand. Your blocks are to set your height, so you set your Sharpie on it such as that, hold it down, take your can, and that's about the height you want to cut it, or whatever height you want to cut it. Just remember, the taller it is, the more fuel it'll hold, the longer it'll burn, but also the more fuel it'll hold. So keep that in mind. And this is the same way you make an alcohol stove. Okay, you have your line drawn all the way around on both of them. And these are a few cans I just skagged from work, so once your line's there, you can use Mr. Knife, anything you want to cut those off. Okay, once you cut them off, as you can tell, I wasn't joking when I said I chewed them off. You have two bottoms. You cut the bottoms off, and that's what you're wanting. The first one, what I'll normally do, the one that goes in the top, is you just force some indents in all the way around, kind of like a stovepipe. And you don't have to use your knife. You can use your pricker or even your finger, depending on how you want to do it. I like the crease of something a little better. Okay, once you have that, make sure they're all set in to where you have basically what looks like a however many pointed star. And that goes in the outside, or that goes on the inside. The other one goes on the outside, and you just squeeze it together. This is old school for most of you, because these have been around for about ever. Then what you can do is take your knife and trim off all the little sharp pointy bits, going all the way around. That takes off anything that will be sharp and nasty, usually. And you take a wood block or a piece of wood and just push that outer edge into it. Make sure you got everything smoothed down nice. Now if you're making a stove, you'd poke a hole in the center and a bunch of holes around the outside. Alcohol stove at equal distances apart. But we're making a lamp now. So you find the center bit. And I like the pricker for this. You can use a nail, anything sharp, even the tip of your knife. Although you have to be careful with that because you'll end up with a hole a little bigger than what you like or off. This way you can get a nice round hole if you want. And this is a pricker from Grimfrost. So that's where I got it. They're just handy for lots of stuff. They call them a medieval fork, but they're actually what was known back in the day as a pricker. They used them for everything. Eating, leatherwork, lancing stuff, drilling holes, as you just saw. And then over here I put a vent. Otherwise, the vegetable oil doesn't run in very good. So, because it's trying to let the air out of the same hole the thick vegetable oil is trying to go into. Okay, you got that. We'll see if the cord wants to go in it easily. Because the size of the hole you make depends on the size of your cord. Okay, the cord fits in. Now the problem with most of these, like if your wick slips down in, all you have to do is reach in these and push them back up. This thing, if it slips down in there, you're just hosed. You have to find a new wick because it's stuck in there till you rip the can apart to get it. So that's what this little bit of wire is for. Okay, the little bit of wire, this comes from a twist tie, so you take all the paper crap off the outside, plastic, just strip it off with your knife. And then you don't need that much of it. You can use that much if you want. Just fatigue it out over the edge of something. Once you have that worked out, go up near the top of your wick. Make sure it's in tight again. And wrap your wire around the top. All it needs to do is be once around. You don't necessarily want it tight, just enough to hold it. Because as your wick burns down, you'll pull it out and slide this down the wick. So you don't want it chokingly tight. What this does is it sits across the hole and keeps the wick from dropping down in. So periodically you'll need to slide it down until your wick is gone. Then you fill it with your cheapest available oil. Is generally the kit to this. And you have an emergency light for like when the tornadoes hit and take out the electricity, or hurricanes, everything else like that. You can make however many of these you think you need. Have them sit and dry with a container of this oil. Ready to go. And one of these will provide light for, oh Lord, I think I burned one well over 6 hours. And it still had oil in it. So I honestly don't know how long they'll burn. I would say 10 to 12 hours. When you get them, if you get them full. And the only thing is, right away, just make sure that wick is saturated. So once it's in there, you don't have to, like an alcohol stove, you don't have to have any above it. You just want to make sure your wick is saturated. So you take your wick, you start it down in the hole. That hole could probably stand to be a bit bigger, but it won't matter. Work it into the hole. Actually, too, the tighter the hole is, I mean, not to where you're forcing it through, but the better off you kind of are, because there's less chance of the wick taking the dive into. And then what I'll do is I'll push that wire just a little bit down in there so it grabs that wick, and it'll hold that wick to that one spot. Then to make sure everything is Saturated quite nicely. Add a little bit on top. Let it sit for a bit. That's the previous one. That's the one just made. And it'll burn off the ends that don't have, it's not saturated in oil, it'll burn it down. It'll smoke a little bit at this point, so you could trim it down a little bit. I didn't bother. It'll burn off rather rapidly until you have that. And once this burns down, you'll have a light just about like that, which is about a candle power. That's all you're going to get out of these. It's basically running a candle. But they're easy to make, they're easy to fill, they're easy to store, and they're much cheaper than candles anymore. As wax or beeswax or anything like that, it's starting to get kind of expensive. Or you can just get online and order one of these, which is basically an olive oil lamp, and you can find them on Amazon. But that's all there is to making a very simple oil lamp, fat lamp, however you want to call it. That's pretty much what they are. It's a little more complex than just running the wick in the bottom of the can, which you can do. But that's all it is. This is Odin's Wolf Survival, and we're making lights for emergencies. Thank you very much for watching. Like, subscribe, and share. Helps me out with YouTube. And have a glorious day.